All right, and we're live on YouTube. We're just going to give a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds for everybody to join, and then I'll start introducing everybody. Remember that you can also send your questions to us on the comment section and join in the conversation. Right, we're just going to give a couple of seconds until there's more people joining.
Perfect.
All right, so welcome to those of you that have joined. Our second warm talk. Last week, Jesper talked about marketing from Sweden, and this week we're talking about how to break into the South African market if you're an international artist and also wanted to break ground, not just in your country, but also in other countries. But our focus tonight will be on how to break into the South African market. And a little bit later on, I'll be chatting to Daniel Barron. He's an artist, songwriter, and composer, award-winning People Magazine 2016 pop star, and also to Wian Smith, a leading marketer when it comes to entertainment in South Africa. So yeah, we're just going to wait until there's a couple of more people joining, and then we'll start. Then I'll start introducing everybody. Well, I can probably do that now. Daniel Barron, South African singer, songwriter, and composer. He's in the full screen there, and he'll be chatting as an artist, how to break into the South African market, for you artists out there. And then a little bit later on, I'll be chatting to Wian Smith, Fenter. He's from the Marketing Zoo, and he's actually got a couple of very national artists that he also represents, and talking about marketing your song to radio pluggers and radio stations in South Africa. So let's talk. Let's start with you, Daniel. Thinking back when you just started your music career, how was your experience as an artist breaking into the South African market? Because just to give context for those of you that's viewing, South Africa has got multiple cultures. There's not just, English is not the only language that's spoken in South Africa. So there's different languages as well. We have, like, for instance, we've got the Afrikaans market, which is also a big market, and then obviously English, but also the gospel, which is the Xhosa, which is Zulu and stuff like that. But I think, especially for an English artist in South Africa, you're not just really competing against the English people, but you're also competing against the Afrikaans and also competing to the international English artists out there. So, Daniel, thinking back, how was your experience as an artist breaking into the South African market?
Well, absolutely. It's surely it is a challenging market, as you've highlighted. You've got a number of different languages and styles. I mean, the amount of different genres. Yes, when you look at the worldwide market, the main genres, for instance, the pop rock, the dance, electronic, alternative. But then when you zoom into South Africa, you've got an eclectic mix of countless genres that are all popular in their own right. So, in the beginning of my career, I've always been a songwriter. So it wasn't necessarily, okay, which genre should I choose? I obviously was true to myself. I was naturally a songwriter in the sort of the pop rock slash, possibly a little bit of the dance genre. And I being a fan of all genres, I started, writing music, composing a lot, and I was playing a lot of gigs in all different venues wherever anyone would have me perform. And then it got to the point where I realized, I need to, start branching out and getting my songs onto the radio. And that was the first big step, and a step that was very instrumental in breaking into the industry in a big way. So, it was a trial and error process. You constantly had to have patience and send out, I must have sent out a number of demos around the place, and eventually one of my songs started getting played on one of the big stations in South Africa, and slowly but surely it was a gradual climb, and one step at a time, one song at a time, and it was never ever a sense of, or a how do I say, it was never a picture of, okay, you are now made. It was a gradual, and it is still a gradual climb. And as back to your, I suppose, your initial question, how was the industry back at that time? Because an industry like this is ever changing. So back at that time, there was, I suppose, maybe even less of a genre differentiation. When you look at it now, the genres just are exploding in a massive firework display of so many different styles. So back then maybe it was a bit easier. I think now is a little bit more tough. But yeah, back to you.
Did you find that when you started, everybody is so eager to start? I mean, did you just think, oh, I'll just email my favorite radio station and see if they'll play it, and then just email 15 other radio stations? And what did you learn from that, from just sending it out and not thinking about the station's genre as well?
You know what? It's actually, if I think about it, it's crazy, because when I'm from Johannesburg, and there was one station that I would always listen to, growing up, and to me that was the station, and that was the sort of the main station in my mind, and that was the one station I started submitting to. And then when they started playing it, I realized, oh wait, they're not the only radio station, and then I started branching out, submitting further and further. And then in the back of my mind, I had the we're talking 10 years ago. So in the back of my mind, I had the goal and the dream that maybe I would get a record deal. And slowly but surely, as I started climbing the ranks and climbing the ladder, I realized that I wanted to rather take the road and do it, on my own as an independent artist. Mainly in the beginning, because my music was kind of, as some people would say, it was kind of, not in one box. It was kind of very, very, maybe some would say all over the place. And a lot of people would say, well, what are you? And I was like, I love music. I love all kinds of music. And that's when I realized, let me just try and do this on my own. And it became a beautiful road of mistakes and victories. And I can confidently say, as I said to you earlier, I'm still learning. I'm still climbing. I don't ever consider myself made until, even one day when I've, reached my highest aspirations. I think we're always still learning as human beings.
And what were some of the pitfalls that you had to overcome back then?
I think of a couple of the beginning pitfalls were actually hearing, sending my stuff, my music out, my demos out, and hearing the word no. No, it's not for us now. No. And I think that word just made me more and more, I suppose, driven and more passionate to actually not only prove these people wrong, but maybe just made me stronger. It made me want to get to my dream even more. So I suppose it was quite a I suppose being a musician, you're having these crazy dreams. I think a lot of people say, well, what's your backup plan? And I didn't really have a backup plan. And I kept thinking, should I have a backup plan? And I just thought there was nothing else I wanted to do, and that's where I just kept going. And there were once or twice, a couple of times where I said to myself, am I doing the right thing? Am I, but there was never a point where in fact, I wrote a number of songs about not giving up and trying to get to the next, climbing to the next ladder and pushing through those closed doors, yeah.
I want to get back to, you said that obviously there was a couple of no's when sending music out. And I think obviously artists get that quite a lot, no's. You say that you don't take it personally, but surely you must feel like, you believe in this product and they don't want to play it, And, from myself, that's, head of music in a regional radio station that does the approval of these songs, sometimes, the artist gets it no, but it's not because the song's not great. It's just, it's either not just fitting into our genre of music that we want to play. How did you experience that?
It's even now I get those, and I suppose a part of you, has personally invested your art into something, and yeah, it is. I'm not going to deny it. It is tough to receive a message or a response to a submission, and it's a no. And but I've learned to harness it in a positive way, and also know that maybe either it's the wrong style for that particular station, or it's not for what those particular people were looking for at the time, or maybe there's room for improvement. And I think there's always room for improvement. And if we can always, as artists, remain humble in knowing that, keep going and keep, if you don't get it if you don't get that number one hit on that specific song that you've worked 3 months on or a year on, then start again and go even harder and work on something new. And I think I think it's more than developing a thick skin, but it's about understanding that you can, you're an artist and you can always create something more. There's never a shortage of creativity in terms of being an artist, and that's the beautiful blessing about being an artist. I think there's never a shortage.
I see there's a comment now which we could get to. Maybe Daniel, from your side, as an artist, just quickly hide it again. We're going to get to that question just now, and then also from a marketer, we've got Wian Smith, that's a leading marketing expert when it comes to entertainment. We're going to chat to him about this question from Motown. Thanks, Motown. If you've got any questions, you're welcome. Just drop your question in the comments, and one of our guys, either Daniel or Wian, will then answer your questions. Actually, fitting to the question of Motown, Daniel, as a songwriter and producer and artist, what tips would you give an international artist? Let's say that it's not signed. It's also taking that you got of actually investing in your own or in yourself, breaking to the South African market.
I think there was a bit of a connection break there, but I see the question there as a songwriter, producer, and artist. The tips that I would give any international artist trying to break into the South African market is, there's definitely the different genres in radio stations. First of all, if you're going to start in radio, so one should do their research beforehand and see, okay, what style of music am I wanting to create or submit, and then submit it to the correct style stations, first of all. And there's as I said, there's such an eclectic mix. So I think that's the first step. And then, the second thing to keep in mind is this South African market, although there's different styles and eclectic mixes, we listen to what the world listens to in any case. So the biggest hits in the world are also the biggest hits in South Africa in a lot of, or the highest played songs. There's a lot of, the international hits that are still played in South Africa. So we're very in line and current with what's going on in the world, which is something to keep in mind.
And then Daniel, what is your experience as an SA artist trying to break into international markets like Europe and USA?
So in 2013, I decided to take a trip to the UK, and I went on a full tour throughout the UK. I think I played a number of shows. I think I played about 15 gigs there, which for me was a big amount of shows to play in the space of say 2 weeks. I think once or twice I played 2 gigs per day. And anyway, that was a beautiful eye opener for me to feel and get to taste the culture, the music culture in London and in and around the UK. That was a tremendous time. And then I at the time had a song that was doing well in South Africa, and managed to get a couple of radio spins of that song on BBC radio at the time, which was really a beautiful experience. I'd love to go back and tour again. I think my career over in South Africa has just been keeping me so busy over here. I haven't had a chance to get back, but my experience has been such a beautiful time, and the music culture in each and every place I played was tremendous. Also the history, to know that I was performing in a piano bar that Ed Sheeran was playing in, 2 years before. So that was a special moment. Yeah.
One of the questions that I want to ask you from an artist comes from Joe, and he asks, he runs four UK record labels with new releases from global artists covering genres of soul, jazz, house, reggae, and hip hop, and he would love to get his artists onto relevant South African radio stations. From an artist point of view, we're going to talk about that question a little bit later with Wian from a marketing perspective. But from an artist perspective, what would your advice be about that, Daniel?
So most definitely, those genres that were mentioned there. There's a massive following of jazz, in particular in South Africa. You've got a huge following and appreciation for the jazz music genre, and there were a number of other genres mentioned there that most definitely has a great demand over here to appreciate that kind of style. So especially new jazz, I think there may be a great demand for new jazz music and that sort of style. Most definitely, I think radio once again is a big platform in South Africa to get your music played on. I think you'll get it to. There's a lot of stations locally that the mere fact that it's a submission from overseas and from an international standpoint, it will be looked at, it will be listened to.
Wian, maybe from your side, we're going to get to some of the questions we've chatted, but what would your answer be to Motown Joe? And she's a lady, by the way. Sorry, Joe.
Sorry.
Well, hi, Joe. Thanks for your question. Pieter, I had to agree with Daniel. There's such a huge variety of principles that you can actually follow. But the number one thing for everyone to always keep in mind is that, as in any other country, South Africa also doesn't have a specific recipe. It's really all about your plan. So I would say, those type of genres, you need to get a team involved for whatever goal you want to achieve. I think a lot of people, specifically in South Africa, connections and relationships plays a very big part. Radio is so important. And lastly, what I also think is important is actually presenting it in a professional way. It's one thing to just get something out because that's a passion that you have. And that's why I think that teams should be involved in these type of processes. So the way you present it also makes a difference. If you present it in a professional way with an actual press release, there's a cover, there's a biography, a little bit more. Instead of sending 4 songs in one submission, rather do it separately and put some attention to detail in it. I think that really makes a difference to whatever release you have to put out in South Africa as well.
I totally agree with Wian. From the person that's actually sitting in that seat, looking at submissions for a radio station, I think definitely relationship comes out 100% at the top, because I mean, most of you guys that's plugging music already has a relationship with like myself or whatever, so it's much easier to present music if you've already got a relationship with someone. The other thing that I've also can say, and a suggestion would be, is that if you submit music, do some research. If it's a French reggae song, for instance, I mean, don't send it to my radio station that doesn't even play one French music and also reggae music, if it's a commercial station. So do your homework, and also find out who's the right person to speak to, and then address them, hi, Pieter, I'm from this and whatever, because most of the time, you just get like an email saying, I would like to submit my music, and a link, Dropbox, and I don't know who you are and stuff like that. So I think if you do your because I mean, all of us are just, we're just human beings. I'm a person, Wian is a person, so it's about that relationship. And if you can build that relationship with that person in that chair that's doing the music approval, it's great. Then another question from Jesper from War Music to you, Daniel, and then later to you, Wian, is how is electric music doing in South Africa? Is it worth for an electric artist to push there? Daniel?
Briefly, my signal dropped there for a second. I just want to see that question again. There we go. How is electronic music doing in South Africa? Thanks, Jesper, for that question. I think it's absolutely well and alive. Electronic music, there is definitely a massive listenership out here, and a number of radio stations that enjoy that. And I mean, look, I mean, obviously now we can't have music festivals, but I mean, there's a massive number of electronic music festivals that occur throughout the year, and I myself have played at some of them, and there's also a large amount of nightclubs all over the country. In every single city, there are nightclubs where people are absolutely ready and thirsty for that kind of music. So most definitely.
And then Wian, what would you say?
Yes, Pieter, I totally have to agree. I think actually it's a market that's really growing at the moment. And the market also allows for new things. I mean, specifically in the electronic market, it's really, there's a lot of practices taking place and people are open for new things. And but like you said in your previous question, I think people need to actually do research. Find out if this is what you want to release, in which of the regions the biggest reach is specifically on that, and then follow a plan. So I definitely think it's worthwhile. There's a massive market in South Africa for it. Like Daniel said, in festivals, electronic festivals, I've attended some of them. It is really massive. So I think it's definitely worth the while.
If you've got questions, you're most welcome to ask some of our panel. You can just put a question onto the YouTube comment section. We'll pick it up and we'll answer it for you. Now, getting to the actual thing of marketing your songs and getting it onto the market here in South Africa. Wian, you're a marketing expert. You also, doing marketing for two very big malls in Gauteng, which is the bigger regions in South Africa. But you also, represent a couple of big artists that you do radio plugging and also PR marketing for. How would you market new releases in a South African context?
So, Pieter, I love that you're saying a South African context, because I really believe that is what it is. Even though the world is a universal place, I believe each country has a specific context. And in South Africa, more so even, I would say that, first of all, obviously, okay, we've discussed reaches now. I mean, that is, you need to have a plan, you need to do some research. Then team, you have to find the right team. Once you've decided on a release, also have a strategy for that. I've seen and I've worked with a lot of artists where they present you, they've done all the work now, they have a single, they have a cover, let's just go with this. But timing is also very important. We as a marketing and PR company, we're always trying to see what else is happening. Because everything in the music industry goes about timing as well. You might have the best song in the world, but if you release as an upcoming artist, you release your song right at the same time as Rihanna releases her song, it will definitely make a difference. So allow your team to actually pull up a strategy and see, okay, is this the right time for the song to release? will people be able to relate to this song at this time and what's happening, and then follow trends. And also with releasing a song, especially so in South Africa, I think an angle is really important. People obviously, I believe in South Africa and in the world, content is king. People want to buy into stories. So if you are able to, you'll find yourself at the right place if you are actually able to tell your story while releasing that song at the same time.
And what is some of the pitfalls that you've seen, in your years of marketing that artists does? Because obviously, you're not just doing new artists. Some very experienced artists also comes to you, and obviously, they've done something or they try to do marketing on their own, and it didn't work. So that's when they come to you. But what are some of the pitfalls that they do wrong as independent artists?
I definitely think people believing that you can be your own one-stop shop, that you can do everything from A to Z. I've seen a lot of pitfalls through that. I believe that creative people should focus on the creativity, especially with artists and musicians. I mean, that is your power. The fact that you can write a song, the fact that you can deliver a song to a live performance, that is your power. Allow someone else to take charge of the admin behind that. Because apart from releasing a song, there's a phase 2, which is the following up, and which is then providing them with angles to actually get interviews done. That is almost more important than the actual release. So I've definitely seen a lot of pitfalls from people trying to do everything themselves, people not releasing a song or a specific release in a professional way. And then, I think people not allowing themselves to follow a specific timing. We, at the moment in South Africa, we believe that a single carries you through about 3 months. We have seen some of the artists in the past year. There's a specific Afrikaans artist, which is her single was putting her through for more than a year on one single. But obviously that doesn't happen a lot. So we believe that they should at least allow 3 months for the single to really try and grow and develop before releasing a new one. Now, also with saying that, yes, sometimes songs do not compete to each other, so it's you are able to release more than one single in that 3 months. But again, timing is really important.
And what benefits is there in using a radio PR plugger to get playlisting? Because obviously artists can do that themselves, but there is a benefit in using a radio plugger or a radio PR person, right?
Yeah, so obviously a radio or PR person, that's what they do for a living. I mean, I always tell the people that we release singles on a daily basis. So obviously, we've apart from forming a relationship, we see in what way they would like to receive. We know which days of the week is better. So I think using a PR or a plugger person, you get that experience that you need as an artist to provide your content in a professional way. And also radio and PR people also follows a specific monitoring program. I know we're doing the live chat for Warm Music now, and I've learned so much of them in the past few months. I believe that getting these things monitored plays a really important part in the release. And that is also something that if you as an independent artist try and get all these things together while doing live shows, while writing new songs, you will let something fall on the ground and you might miss the ball.
That's so true. I mean, some artists, and I've got 2 examples. Jesper from War Music also wrote a blog article on warmusic.net, which you should go read. It's about let me first tell my story. A colleague of mine is in a band called the Capitals, and they've already had like 3 or 4 singles out over a stretch of 2 years. One now doing a bit better than the other ones. So we just did an experiment of tracking their airplay internationally, and they were very dumbsmacked to see that, obviously they've got playlists in South Africa, but there's also a couple of German stations that picked up on their song and also plays their songs quite a bit. So I think this is imperative when it comes to marketing, and also checking on where your song is playing, because now, I mean, they know that they probably have a following in Germany, and this would be a good opportunity for them to then also get in touch with those radio stations that play their song, get interviews, and then maybe do a radio tour because they've got an audience. And I think the same thing happened with an artist, Jesper from More Music, and maybe tell more about that. But he also had a blog post on warmmusic.net if you want to go read that, which was quite interesting. Then the other question I have for you, Wian, is, can you break into the South African market with any genre of song? Is there really just a certain genre that will just be successful, or can you really break into, like, for instance, like just electronic music or just reggae, for instance?
And Pieter, I think everyone's perception of success is also different. I've seen in the past few years that one artist might release a specific song to get awareness in a new market, whereas another artist might release a specific commercial song to actually make an income from that. So I think, first of all, you need to decide, what is your perception of success? What do you want to get done with the specific release? I believe the market is really open, and you can actually release different types of genres. I do believe that you need to focus on one thing at the same time as well. But in the last few years, things have really changed. And with the digital era becoming so big, if you look at in the past, when an artist released a full album, obviously the whole album had the same theme, look and feel. Everything was in a specific genre, more or less. Whereas these days, the lifespan is so much shorter with the digital era. You can actually reinvent yourself every 3 months with a new single, which means every 3 months with a new single, you might be able to release in a different genre. Now it comes back to, what do you want to get from that? Do you want to get live shows? Because obviously it's going to be quite difficult when you only release one single every 9 months in a specific genre, and then want to perform live shows or online shows in that genre, because you need to build up a following. But if you just want to get some brand awareness for your brand or for your name, that it might be you might be successful in taking a chance in releasing different genres and trying out new things as well.
Daniel, great point. Yeah, do you want to say more something more on that, Daniel?
I think you said it all there, Wian. I think, when it comes to with the style difference now, I think everyone is trying to try different stuff, and that's great. But in the end, one's got to actually define what you're trying to achieve. What is success? Is it getting I suppose getting a lot of radio plays, which will hopefully translate into streams, which will hopefully translate into more live shows, I suppose, is one of the goals. But what Wian said is really, really, he's hit the nail on the head there.
Daniel, have you ever been, because I know that you also use radio airplay monitoring, are you sometimes surprised to see your song playing internationally where you've never even heard of the radio station, or has that happened to you?
Yes, it's really a lovely, an incredible, a lovely feeling to realize that there are other stations around the world playing my stuff, and sometimes, the first time I started getting wind of that was, I think I started receiving messages from new fans in random beautiful other places around the world, and then I started realizing, wow, there's some airplay in Thailand, for example. I mean, that was one of a really cool finding. And then from Dubai to Germany as well. I think the Germans are appreciative of South African music, which is really great to know. And I think it's for us, it's also, as much as there's people tuned in wanting to find out how to what avenues to take to submit to South Africa. We've also got to check what's going on in the other parts of the world, which I think a lot of the time when you are in a specific market, you can get really sucked in and zoned in on your market. But it's so important to branch out, I think. Yeah.
Mm. And I can actually stress that because you know, it all comes back to, again, you know, to target your market. And Wian can say a little bit more about this, because it's not going to, you're really just going to waste your time and resources emailing 400 radio stations in South Africa trying to get playlisting from maybe one or two, because that's the only two that really just plays your genre of music. So research, I think, is imperative, and also just focus on the radio stations that will play your music. Right, Wian?
Yes, I totally agree. I think a focus plan is way better than just having a very diverse plan. And approach is obviously important as well. And with every release, I tell a lot of the upcoming artists as well, you're building your brand with every single release. So remember, even though the station is not playing the song at the moment, they might get to know you now. And if you send, if you didn't do any research and you just hit send all, if you send a song to a radio station that you know will never ever play them, it also creates a little bit of an aspect with them thinking that, you know what, this is just a bulk email that went out. There's no personal touch going into this. And that contributes to you building your brand with these stations and with these media.
I want to finish off with maybe the last question. How do you, both of you, from an artist and songwriter point of view, and also from a marketing point of view, handle the fact that you rarely get response from radio stations if it's playlisted or not? Right, Daniel?
Yeah, that is an interesting one, because I'll my team will submit new music, and then we won't hear anything, and one will think that hearing no news is negative. Usually, one thinks that, and then the next thing there's music being played on that particular station that didn't respond to an email. And I mean, I can understand there must be thousands of music songs being submitted to every radio station, and I would imagine it's quite tiring to respond to everyone, which is understandable. But yeah, a lot of the time as an artist, you kind of get used to being in the dark. But there are plenty stations that do respond really timelessly when you do. When you submit, and yeah, Peter, I must thank you. I mean, you respond like almost the same that same hour, which is really amazing. But yeah, there's I think because I've been in it for 10 years, you kind of get used to not hearing back, and you just keep going, and you send a follow-up, and if you don't hear back, you just kind of just keep going, and then eventually, if the song becomes a hit, it starts permeating into every station. But I know for a fact, obviously I write and produce music for a lot of new artists as well. So I almost feel their frustration when, I almost relive my career when I started out. I relive it through them, and I understand what they're going through when they're trying to break through, and it's tough, but it's just, as an artist, we need to just keep that nature of not giving up, because I think there's a reason you've got a dream in the end. And sorry to get philosophical, but I do believe that as an artist, if you believe you've got this dream, and look, given you've got some kind of talent, obviously, I do believe that one should keep going and not giving up. Is really important.
That's Daniel Barron, South African artist. I could also, I don't want to get into this, but I mean, just to show how popular you are, I mean, one of the biggest names in electronic music really stole your lyrics and songs and put it into his mix. But we're not going to get into that, but it just shows you that, it's nice to be picked up, Wian, from your side, I mean, if obviously an artist would like to get feedback from a radio station to know if it's playlisted or not, which rarely happens, unless, you've got some radio people that does. But I mean, for a marketer, it's actually more important to know that a song is playlisted or not, because I mean, the artist probably nags on you the whole time, listen, but where's my songs playlisted or not? So I think for a marketer, isn't that more difficult?
Well, Peter, I think it's yeah, as a marketer perspective, it's quite frustrating, obviously, when you don't get feedback from the stations. Although I also, like Daniel said, I also do understand you get a lot of submissions and things. And luckily these days, I mean, I think either as an independent artist or as a record label or as a PR person, having a radio monitoring program, something like Warm Music, plays such an important part. Because instead of you then having to remind or follow up constantly, mailing the station, finding out is it getting playlisted or not, you can actually, when you see it being monitored and actually see that the station is playing the song, you can directly move on to the next phase, which will then be trying to get an interview. So I definitely think that technology has been making things a lot easier. I don't know how they did it in about 15 years ago, before all these programs and technology things were there, because it can be really frustrating. I mean, if you put out a product, you need to manage the process, and as a PR person, you need to be able to report on that. I mean, if a client is paying you a submission fee or a retainer fee or whatever they are paying you for, they at least need to know what they are paying for. And if you can't give any feedback on that, it makes it really difficult. So if anyone is listening and you haven't checked out the Warm Music site yet, please check it out. It really makes it a lot easier for that first step of not having to hassle and follow up all the time, of just moving into the next phase of seeing that it is playlisted or not.
Awesome. Wian Smith Venter from the marketingzoo.co.za. Thank you so much for your insight into PR and marketing side. Daniel, always nice to chat to you about music. And thank you for what you're doing for a lot of new artists. You really have some great new singles that you've submitted with other artists as well, which is really, really great.
Thank you
so much for everyone to join, and join in again next week, Thursday at 5 o'clock. Warm Music will do another Warm Talk at 5 o'clock. So stay tuned and subscribe to their website, warmmusic.net. Thanks, Daniel. Thanks, Wian.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you.